a day savage enough to make a St. Bernard whimper, they played the 1967 NFL Championship.
The operator said, very cheery, "Good morning, Mr. Rensel. It's 8 a.m. It's 15 below zero, and there's a 20-mile-an-hour wind coming out of the northwest. Have a pleasant day."
It is called Russian winter, the kind of brutal cold that made Napoleon and Hitler flee in panic from the doorstep of Moscow. But in Green Bay, it is called Packer weather. Here men conquer and laugh at the elements. Today, Vince Lombardi's Packers walk toward an unprecedented third straight NFL championship. Prisoners of the weather, the Dallas Cowboys wore the look of convicts walking the final mile.
Prior to the game, of course, we got there 2 days before the game, and there's a picture that I took of Meredith, and he had his hands cupped like this, and he was saying, easy money, you know, like the game was going to be easy. And if he'd only known, you know, how cold it was going to be, I don't think he would have said that.
You had no feeling in your hands. There's nobody that has an advantage in that kind of weather. That is cold. I mean, it was miserable.
It was so cold that when you literally walked outside, you couldn't take it. Now, you play in cold games most of the time, and it takes a while for you to get cold. But in this particular circumstance, the cold hit you like the moment you were out there. The band was out there, you know, to play before the game, and we looked over there and I saw like 15 guys in the tuba and trumpet section, and all their faces had blood all over. And what had happened, they were going out there to play, and the instruments stuck to their lips, and when they pulled the instrument away, it just ripped all the skin on their lips off. So everywhere you looked, you saw this kind of insanity going on. We go back to the locker room, and instead of going over our game plan and stuff, we're like trying to improvise and ad-lib on how we're going to get through the game. Forget winning the game, how are we going to survive the game? Well, somebody got this wild idea that let's put the stocking net down over our faces, and then we can cut out eye holes and nose holes and a mouth hole, you know, and like things that just seemed preposterous that there would have been that much concern with. That's all we could think about. So Landry, I think, just kind of lost control of what the situation was at that moment, and I don't blame him. I mean, nobody wanted to hear about game plans.
The cold never came into my, never thought about the cold, like, because I wanted to win that game so bad.
I didn't feel the cold as much that day as I would have on a normal day. I was excited about the game. We had a great deal of emotion, a great deal of adrenaline running through our bodies, and we had a job to do. We had other things on our mind. And that particular day, we were worried about Dallas. We weren't worried about the cold.
With the Packers focused on victory and the Cowboys merely on survival, the first period took a natural course, a course that took Green Bay into the end zone. Twice Bart Starr hit number 86 Boyd Dollar with touchdown passes, and the Packers built a 14-0 lead in the second quarter.
We had one of the, if not the fastest teams to ever play the game. We had speed at every skill position and at places where you weren't supposed to have speed. Not only was our speed taken away, I think the fact that Bobby Hayes was nullified by the weather conditions. That was not one of Bobby's great games.
I guess one of my most vivid memories of that game is of Bob Hayes, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, running his pass patterns with his hands in his pants. He put both hands down in the front of his pants, and he would run a pass pattern with his hands still in his pants.
Cowboy speed was not the only thing muffled by the cold.
I blew my whistle to start the ball game, and I didn't really blow it. It was only a half a blow because it was a tweet, and that was the end of all whistles for the ball game. they all froze on us. Joe Connell, he tried to blow his whistle and nothing came out, and he took it out and he didn't have a nipple on his whistle or rubber, and half his lip came with it. So we just yelled, stay away, keep off them, and everything.
As icicles lengthened into stalactites, Cowboy chances for a comeback grew longer. Finally, the Doomsday defense drew a bead on Bart Starr and battered him. A touchdown by defensive end George Andre, number 66, and a field goal narrowed the score to 14-10 at the half.
The total momentum of the game had shifted over. Now, by this time, it's much colder than it was even at the start of the game. But we've gotten our focus and our concentration on the game itself.
The game huffed and puffed along and lost its steam in the third quarter. The cold became intolerable, and Vince Lombardi's electric blanket installed into the turf to thaw the ground failed. Lambeau Field was an ice rink with a surface more suited to Hans Brinker and his silver skates than football players and cleats.
The field was like take a rug and put it over marble, or maybe just play on marble, and you've got an idea of the field and what it was like in terms of traction. And I didn't really want to hit the ground. I didn't want to get hit by anybody, and I didn't want to hit the ground. Meredith was sitting in the huddle, and he gets down on one knee and he goes, "Red right, hang on." I said, "That's easy for you to say, Don, but what did you say?" He said, "All right, on two." And what was happening was his cheeks were freezing, and he couldn't talk, and his ability to formulate the words was leaving him. So Don had to call the plays by taking his hands and moving his mouth in such a way. I mean, he was talking with his hands.
8 seconds into the fourth quarter, the frozen lips of Don Meredith formed a bold but risky call. A halfback option pass from Dan Reeves to Lance Renzel. The pass not only sliced through high winds and frigid air, but seemed destined to carve out the Cowboys' first NFL championship. The Cowboys achieved their first lead, 17-14. Trapped inside their igloo, the Packers appeared a beaten team.
When we came on the field as a team to start that drive, and this is most important, everybody in that huddle had the look that we were going to get it done somehow, some way, and it was the greatest feeling in the world. I felt that way, and as I looked into the eyes of the other players in that huddle, it was a great thing to see.
With 4 minutes 40 seconds remaining, the Green Bay Packers launched one of the most thrilling and dramatic comebacks in NFL history. They would have to travel 68 yards across a polar ice cap and through a defense determined to preserve their first NFL title.
I remember Boyd Dowler's head bouncing off the frozen turf when he caught a pass for a first down, and his head bounced 3 or 4 times.
The Packers' march centered on 2 unlikely heroes. Running backs Donnie Anderson, number 44, and Chuck Mercine, number 30.
They were alert enough at that stage of the game, cold and battered, to come back and tell me of ways that they could get open when they really were not the primary receiver.
The Packers plowed inside the 10 when they suckered Bob Lilly out of position by falsely pulling a guard, then sneaking Mercine into the vacated rush lane. At the goal line, the Packers' drive stalled. 16 seconds remained, and it was 3rd and goal when they took their final timeout.
2 other times earlier in the game, we had run a play which we call a wedge play, designed strictly for short yardage out in the field. It was also a goal line play. The problem was that at that end, the south end of the field, a shadow is cast down there late in the season by the scoreboard, and the field was really frozen. And so the backs could not stand up and even get to the line of scrimmage. So when I went to the sideline, I told Coach Lombardi the wedge play would work. I said, but the backs can't get there. I said, I'm upright. I can just feel my way in for a couple of steps and then just lunge in there. He said, great, run it. Let's get this thing over with.
It was too slick in that part of the field to do any kind of end runs or any kind of, anything other than maybe a straight ahead play or a quarterback sneak. I had told Jethro, I said, Jethro, I think they're going to come right at you or me, right up the middle. And I was trying to dig some holes with my cleats, but the ice was a couple inches thick. And I said, we ought to call timeout and get a screwdriver and dig us some footholes.
Here are the Packers. 3rd down, inches to go. To Bader. 17-14. Cowboys out in front. Packers trying for the go-ahead score. Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneak, and he's able to touchdown. The Packers are out in front. 20-17. There's 13 seconds showing on the clock, and the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions, NFL champions.
It's probably the greatest play in all of 15 years when he fell over for that touchdown, and we won that ball game. We knew we were going to win our 3rd championship in a row.
And I give them all the credit for being champions and doing what needed to be done to win. But I got to tell you, I've never seen a loss take the heart out of a team like that loss took it out of the Dallas Cowboys. On the plane ride home, not one word was said. Not one word. It was like a tomb for 3 hours on a flight. The press came out and called us chokers and said that the Dallas Cowboys couldn't win the big one.
Vince Lombardi's Packers had won another big one. They had conquered both the elements and the Cowboys to capture a record 3rd straight NFL title. It was a game that would literally become frozen in the memory. A game considered the greatest in pro football history.